to Swiss tape.
Review went right in. What it is, what it do. Welcome to Nostarga Lane. Joshua Adam Marbeth, not with the talented, sexy, dangerous Devoneer. It's Devon Seal.
You didn't have anything clever for me?
I got nothing clever. Well, I do have some good news, at least. Good news, everyone.
Okay, what is it, Farnsworth?
Just because, Rundown is a hybrid of this right now, technically. Writer strike is over, and then SAG announced their meeting on October 2nd. So that's on next Monday as we're recording this, the coming up Monday. So all this stuff could be behind us, and we can start looking forward to our favorite shows again.
Yeah, according to The Town with Matthew Bellany, they were anticipating a comeback date after American Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
If it all goes well, obviously a lot of those things that are pushed back are still pushed back because they have to do like overdubs.
Stuff is getting fast tracked, right? So you're hearing like a lot of Disney and Netflix and HBO. Like HBO's like no new shows are what they're worried about. Like get Last of Us done, get Euphoria done, get White Lotus done, and Netflix is like get Stranger Things done, get Wednesday done.
Pretty much. I mean, next year is going to be interesting in terms of
the most anticipated list is going to be the most bonkers, weird.
It's going to be chaotic.
It's I don't even know. I am debating if we do a most anticipated list next year.
Right.
Because it's one of my favorite pods to do, but I'm just like, I don't know if things will be there. The only thing I know for sure is that House of the Dragon's happening.
Right. Well, are they what's their filming schedule for that even anyways?
It's done. It's done. They wrapped up
season
today.
2 is done.
Because they were allowed to do some stuff because they're BAFTA. So I think they get different rules or whatever. So they wrapped up today. So that's why it's the only one I know for sure.
Gotcha.
Will be done. It sounds like Deadpool and some other movies are getting fast tracked and they're going to try to get done in time.
Right.
But as we saw from the last writer's strike, some things didn't come out as well as we wanted them to.
Here's looking at you, James Bond.
Yeah. And many other things. But let's talk about things that are coming out well. Ahsoka keeps on trucking along, and it's been pretty good.
You know what? Against like all my better intentions, I suppose, it's very, very hard to hate on the show right now, the way that's currently constructed. We can discuss, and we actually have discussed the pros and cons of this show, especially in the beginning few episodes. But basically it's firing at all cylinders. Like I'm invested.
And I feel like now, like every Star Wars pod I listen to or stuff I see on TikTok, it's the same conversations. And I will preface this. When I went to Disney World this summer, there is a giant audience that is in love with the sequels, and there's kids that are growing up with it, and that is their Star Wars, and I'm so glad they got to have that. But fuck, I wish
they're wrong. They're wrong, but
this leading to what would be a sequels would be so cool.
If
it dampens it like just dampens it. I'm not put a percentage. Like even, and I'm a fucking easy mark. We know this. It's not hard to hit the member berries on me in Star Wars or Marvel. I am an easy mark. So when I saw 3PO, I'm like, let's go.
You know what it was? It was like it wasn't gratuitous. It was a little clumsy, but at the end of the day, like it didn't overstay its welcome. It proved a small point that they're out there, that they're doing their own thing, and that the world is alive and well.
Yeah.
That's all it did. That's all. And it was like a 5-minute scene. And guess what? Anthony Daniels sounded great. He looked great. Assuming it's him in the suit. Probably isn't, but assuming it is.
Probably isn't.
Looked great. Sounded great. Don't care. That was awesome. Friggin' Chopper had a moment too where he's ready to like fight a bitch.
As always,
Yeah.
psychopath.
Yeah. Like it was like these last few episodes, we've seen clear influence. Like we've seen clear contemporary influences on the creators of this show, and that's what makes it so great. I saw this great tweet or like kind of a small post about inspirations, and George Lucas took like three things that inspired him, and it was like World War II air battles, samurai movies, and then like
Dune.
friggin'
Dune. And Dune.
well, yeah, basically, and like that was his interpretation of Star Wars, were those kinds of things, and Filoni's interpretation of what he grew up with are slightly different, but he's finding ways to make his impact very, very meaningful.
Yeah.
Right?
And
He wasn't as affected by World War II films as Lucas was because of the time frame. So for Filoni, it's a little bit it is like a little bit more Vietnam-esque or Korea-esque. Like it is a little bit more dingier and dirtier and grungier because those are the battles that Filoni's childhood fought.
here's an interesting point too, Dev, because this was brought up by the Ringerverse. And so it had been proposed this week that Leia will be in the Thrawn movie, potentially played by Billy
Well, they
Lloyd.
all should be. They just recast them.
And so there you go. So it's Van Lathan said this best. He's like, look, I know we have our attachments to Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill, but like
I'm
that's
good.
great. But these characters still exist in this
Yeah.
world, and to ignore them is stupid. To ignore them is stupid because they are such an influential part
Yes.
of what is going on. And obviously, I mean, and look, I could be wrong in here, and if I am, people send me emails, let me know. But as far as I know, for canon, how much canon do we know of what everything that happened with Ben and everything before Force Awakens? Like, is there a lot of canon on that?
No, there might be some comic tie-ins.
So, like, this is Filoni kind of working in a blank space right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you mean after like the Battle of Jakku and before Force Awakens?
Yeah.
I think we're literally writing the book as these shows go on.
Okay.
There's
So,
nothing.
like, you can kind of make whatever you want happen. I mean, from flashbacks and Rise of Skywalker, we know that Leia was getting trained by
Yes.
Luke, and then she quit because she was pregnant. So I would assume maybe that's around now. Like maybe she's getting close to having Ben right now.
We're getting pretty close because it's like 5 years after Empire, or sorry, not
Yeah.
Empire. 5 years after Jedi.
Yeah.
Which is 30 years after or between. So Jedi and them are 30 years difference or something like that. So assuming Kylo Ren is 25 years old, like he's either been born and he's like a small child, or he is about to be born. We're getting
Yeah.
very close.
Because I have to it in the movie, I'm going to have to assume that the core the core of three originals will play some factor in it, because now you've done it. You've set the template that Leia Organa is in this, and she has a relationship with Hera. So now to ignore that, you can't really do. I mean, and again, that's something now in my mind that does kind of hurt the sequels, because if Leia and Hera had such a great relationship, she would be around more in the
Right.
sequels. And obviously she's in the battle in Rise of Skywalker. I know we see the ship and everything like that, but obviously maybe there'd be more of a connection there. But whatever, I can kind of forgive that. And they did a job too of Filoni continuing to work in the realms he's allowed to. You heard Sabine talk to Ezra and kind of catch him up and everything. And Ezra being like, so Palpatine is dead. And she's like, that's what they say, just to kind of like leave the question mark on top of everything. Somehow he will return.
I wish I knew how he would have returned. Like I just have no idea.
But
Anyways, it doesn't matter.
on top of it. So yeah, they have to somewhat exist, and it gets you so excited with it. And there's a lot of base I want to talk to. I will say with this before we kind of talk about the deeper roots of the show. I do believe episode 8 will leave us with our heroes stranded. I firmly believe our heroes will be stranded. I believe
Okay.
maybe a Balin sacrifice, maybe potentially, or something with Shin and him, and Shin turning on him to the right side.
Do you think her turning is going to be is like that? Is it's that predictable and that easy? Like, do you think we don't you think we need to work on it a little bit just as like an
Maybe. I
audience?
mean, there's also the side too. Like I was thinking this, like, so if Palpatine, well, we do know Palpatine is still lurking in the shadows and being a puppet with all this stuff right now, right? And probably somewhat behind the
Either
Shadow
he's
Council.
alive or his spirit is alive
Yeah,
or
like
some bullshit.
the guy from the council, that guy has to be part of the Shadow Council because he was just way too much of a dick. Like that guy has to be part of the Shadow Council. I was thinking, but anyways, I
That's a really
digress.
good question.
I was thinking, I'm like, and so if Palpatine is around, right, and obviously, is some kind of form of Snoke or develop Snoke or whatever, there has to be some kind of Sith presence in the universe at this point. We have all these Jedi's walking around, right? We have Ahsoka, we have Sabine and Ezra all together on this one planet. There's a bunch of others that we potentially don't know about. For all we know, Omega is out there. We don't know if what she is, if she's like a Boba Fett clone or she is a Jedi user,
Sure.
because who
Okay.
fucking knows? Cal Cascus could be out there, and again, lots of others. So my point is, we know there's all these other Jedi potentially out there. We have 3 on a fucking planet in their own right. There has to be a Sith present out there. So I'm wondering, is Shin going to be that Sith presence? Or is there something else for a Sith presence out there that we're not aware of just yet?
So I'll push back a little bit.
Okay.
About the rule of two.
That's what I'm wondering.
So someone so the rule of two was
Because
kind of
did someone die for Snoke to get Ben?
so one of the things that the sequel trilogies do not make clear is, and I from what I understand about the limited lore of the new trilogy, I don't think Kylo Ren is technically a Sith.
Okay, so he's
And
not.
I
So
don't
Snoke
think
isn't his master.
and I don't think Snoke is even technically a Sith.
Okay,
That's that's being like very very technical. Are they like
so they're
dark
kind
side?
of shades of gray, like what Balin is.
No, they're not shades of gray. It's just like the idea of the Sith, which after the like when the Jedi basically came back to power and they led into the era of the High Republic, which was the 25,000 years of peace
And now we're
that the
we're currently in the
galaxy
new.
speaks. Um, in order for the Sith to survive, they had to drastically dwindle their numbers, and they worked in the shadows a lot more. Previously, they were
Right.
they were a whole empire, right?
That's what I'm
And
thinking. There's got to
so,
be some in the shadows.
but when you think about the actual definition of the Sith, it ends with Vader and Sidious.
Mm-hmm.
So even like unless Sidious had other apprentices, and of course we know that his end plan was to actually turn Luke to the dark side and have him kill Vader. Um, there's no
Well,
one in that.
without spoilers, in Fallen Survivor, there is Sith.
Oh,
And
sure, but
and as far as I know, that is canon? Question mark.
I'm just saying the rule of two is very very clear. But
Yes.
Palpatine follows it and doesn't follow it when the mood suits him. So he kind of breaks the rules whenever he wants. Therefore, like, does Palpatine have other Sith Lord apprentices? The question is, I don't know. But it's also like, is it likely? Probably not, because there'd be some other indication. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no way that there's no way after Palpatine's death and Vader's death that the Imperial remnants would not have rallied around this other Sith Lord, right? And I actually mean like someone who has the title of Darth. Even so, like you know, if we're going to
Gideon's not even like Gideon is like the figure kind of, but he's
do we
not a
even know
Sith.
do we even know he's a Force user? Like
He's
that's kind of
not.
another
He's
question
not. He
because
just they said like to on the council he was just an evil dictator more or less.
he was a warlord.
Warlord. Thank you. That's the word.
So you know, another kind of thing that would kind of prove my point, I suppose, is someone like Asajj Ventress
Mm.
is very like she might be an acolyte, she might be someone who studies the dark side of the Force, but she is not considered a Sith.
No.
So, and if her and Grievous are basically like the two that we knew the best throughout the Clone Wars. We knew that Dooku was a Sith because he had the title Darth Tyrannus. So to have other Sith, I think is we know that we know that Sith there was like Sith cultists on Exegol, right? Because that's when like Palpatine got resurrected. But like how that happens, we have no idea.
Yeah, because he says I am all the Sith, and then Rey says I am all the Jedi.
Yeah, like I don't think there's any other Sith floating around because that would be like, because imagine being Disney at this point in time being like, oh yeah, guess what? We're gonna introduce a new Sith character who was around the whole time of Empire, who didn't really, unless they were like so supremely confident, they just didn't care if Palpatine lived or died.
Mm.
I don't see it being very, very realistic.
I guess you could kind of go with the idea as well with Rise of Skywalker that what Palpatine was trying to do, what an Exegol was resurrect the Sith via Rey, and that was his entire plan.
You know, it's not really. I mean, I've only seen it twice, so I'm actually like not the person to ask. I was always under the impression that he was trying to like steal her like life force or something like that.
He was trying to
like rejuvenate himself.
It was confusing because at one point he wanted her to gym by her side, and
yeah.
then it also still
he was like, "No, just kidding. I hate you. Like, I'm gonna start zapping you."
We're trying our best to canonize it in a positive way, and it's not doing anything.
Guess what? Filoni and Favreau are doing the exact same thing right now.
We're trying, guys. Like we're trying.
But
Apatow didn't help us. I would die for Mara Jade. That's probably what Filoni's like. Why can't I have Mara Jade?
Well, we don't know. We don't know that.
I guess we could. Still.
We very, very well could. Or it's the kind of thing. So these are the kinds of more realistic openings that we have now. So for example, Mara Jade, and I guess I don't know who his son's name is going to be now because fucking Ben Skywalker is already an established character, but fuck me sometimes.
Wouldn't he tell Rey that he has a son?
Well, this is okay. So hear me out. This is exactly the kind of thing where, like, let's say him, Mara, and Ben, the original.
We will talk about Ahsoka, I swear, but this is just a fun rabbit hole for me lately.
Whatever we want to call Luke's kid.
Okay.
They all live together. Kylo Ren starts striking down and destroying the Jedi Temple. She takes the kid and runs. And because she's a Jedi, she's actually a Dark Force user. She is not even a Sith when Luke met her. She's actually trying to kill him. Funny enough, haha. She takes her son and then trains him somewhere like else in the galaxy, far away from everything. So you could theoretically, as a storytelling device, introduce those two much, much later. Because if Rey didn't turn out, or I guess in this case, if Ben Solo didn't turn out, there was always one more, which would have been Luke's kid. Which would be kind of fun. I'm okay with that. In reality, the way that it goes is that Mara is actually killed by a family member. It's pretty crazy.
She could be technically killed by the Knights of Ren, but I guess you would bring that up that the Knights of Ren also kind of killed my wife.
And that's exactly the hard part of the sequel trilogies. Now you're working backwards is
because, sorry, Dev, if you said like the Knights of Ren killed my wife and I knew you were a part of it and that's why you attacked your nephew, that makes some sense.
That makes so much sense, right? But why doesn't anyone ever like mention Luke's kid or Luke's wife or like Ahsoka? Well, it's because they like don't really think that far ahead. That's the writer's dilemma.
Well, because also Filoni like Freddie Prinze has said 1,000 times, Freddie was Filoni was the Padawan, learning under the tree of Lucas. So he understands the whole side of everything. He knows the cat. Like Freddie joked a while ago, he thinks he knows Star Wars better than George does now, in many ways, at least for all the canon and everything, because I'm sure George hasn't read all the canon and know all the large canon the way that Filoni does. So
yeah, that's basically you're exactly right.
Apatow is just like, hey, this planet would be cool, and we'll make this thing up. That'll be fun.
Apatow?
Apatow, like that's probably him and Rain Johnson were probably just like, yeah, like this.
Oh,
Abrams.
Abrams.
Thank you. Sorry, an Apatow Star Wars would have been very interesting. Abrams though probably like, yeah, let's just go to this planet, and Rain Johnson's like, yeah, a gambling planet, and we could have the royal family maybe in it. That'd be kind of interesting. But instead of like setting up the template of going, because again, I do find every single week we talk about the links you could have to stuff. Having Mara Jane and having Kylo join the Knights of Ren and then kill her.
Yeah, that makes way more sense.
That would be a reason why Luke tried to strike down his neck, and Luke would still be under the possession of, even though he killed someone I loved, I still should have not. I've turned to the dark side.
The hard part is
my nephew.
The hard part is like, how are you going to kill it? Like, because the scene is so specific, right? We see him standing over him.
Yes.
You're telling me Ben Skywalker just killed his auntie and then went to sleep very peacefully in his little grass hut.
Well, you can even just say he helped,
right?
He led the Knights of Ren to do it, and then whatever.
I suppose. Yeah, whatever, I suppose. It's just kind of one of those things where like they frame that shot so specifically to make it look like there's like hate flowing through him or fear flowing through Ben.
If there that's was my like least favorite thing in Star Wars is that moment. That's maybe one of my least favorite things from the sequel is that moment.
I think the fact his name's fucking Ben's my least favorite.
That too.
like
that too.
But hey, guess what? Ben Kenobi rescued her under a trench coat and she never forgot it. That's why
one ticket, please.
That's why her kid's name is now Ben. And why is his last name Solo? Because he's the last of his people.
Yep. So yeah, I can't help it, and like I think everybody else can't help but try to like connect it to the sequel.
We're trying
as well, because there's just so many connective tissues, but it's like there's so many big characters like Mando and Grogu and Ahsoka and Ezra and
well, we wanted to connect. We wanted to connect because guess what? We have 6. I'm actually going to include Rogue One here. We have 7 goddamn movies that fit perfectly together. Han is kind of like the Solo story is like kind of take it or leave it, and I'm not going to judge.
We left Crimson Dawn on a question mark. That could be fucking cool.
I'm not gonna like overly be critical of Han Solo because I kind of considered it like its own outside. That's it's not Rogue One that fits in so perfectly. Everything is supposed to fit because we have 7 movies that do perfectly fit.
Yeah. And that's why
we're working so hard at it, and that's why it sucks.
Yeah, like if this was the start of something, like the first chapter, it would be amazing. Like, and you left, and then if like the first chapter leaves with them stranded, and Thrawn and everyone get away. Imagine that year if it's the movie, right? And imagine that year of everyone like, shit, they're stuck, and how's he gonna get it? And then they like show the first trailer, and they show Han. And Luke, and you're like, oh shit, the OGs are coming back, and they're gonna try to save them, and they're gonna try to do this, and these guys are like, people would lose their shit. $2 billion box office coming at you.
Oh, could you imagine like the Ahsoka, Luke, Han, Leia, Mando crossover scene? Like that's like Infinity War level like Thanos snap shit right
there. That's what I'm talking about. That's
people would start screaming.
And I think that's why right now, talking to our fellow member of FTN, Andy, I feel like this is what Star Wars has finally kind of done with Ahsoka. I feel every single week I've felt the momentum of that joy back for Star Wars. Like, what's next? Because we did, like, whether people want to admit or not, we had that after Force Awakens. We had like, oh, what's this, and what's this, and what's this, and who's Snoke, and what's this, and what's Rey's parents, and does Finn have this? there was this excitement and these questions that you had after Force Awakens. And for the first time since Force Awakens, I feel like those kind of questions are back the same way we have at Marvel. Andor was just quality television. It was just perfectly laid down television that didn't have Jedi and told a great story without Skywalkers and Jedi. This is the kind of questions that you would ask priorly with Star Wars projects when you walked out of Clone Wars and you said, "Oh shit, so what's going to happen next? And how is Luke going to turn? How is Anakin going to turn and all that?" We're kind of at that point right now with what Ahsoka's led up to. And that's why I said to you, like, with all respect to Andor, which is fantastic, this is the most for me, and we'll be, again, breaking down more stuff of the episode here, but this is the most excited for me I have been with live action Star Wars since we walked out of Rogue One. Was after this episode, I'm just like, I'm just more invested in it than I have been probably since walking out of Rogue One.
It's finally starting to ask big questions that we are going to get actual answers to, that hopefully will not revolve around Fortnite tie-ins or some weird book version of some story between movies. Like, the extracurricular work that we should be doing as fans. Okay, now I'm going to consider us, we are not 10 out of 10 fans. Like, we don't have tattoos and stuff like that. No. We're probably, I consider myself to be probably like an 8.5 fan.
And I'd probably be about a 7.8.
Yeah, you're probably close to an 8, 7.5, somewhere in there. I get that.
Yeah. Because you have more deep lore in that, and only thing I really have in you is Rebels and Jedi Survivor.
Yeah, I think I'm caught up on Rebels now. I think you're
good. I think you're good.
Now, where was I going with this? Hold on. No, but the amount of extra attention required, even to be a casual fan right now, is too much. Yes. Which goes back to our planning that we kind of talked about last week, that you've touched on a little bit already, was if these 4 TV shows, because it'd be Boba, Mando, Ahsoka, and Skeleton Crew.
Yes.
If that led to the new trilogy, suddenly you're asking quite a bit, but you're not asking a lot, especially if there's large gaps, right? In terms of
especially
TV,
since you got to share a password now.
Oh,
can't share a password.
Yeah, you know what's going to start happening is I'm going to start being a smuggler myself, if you know what I mean. But if they had redone this, and you're saying, okay, I have to watch like even 4 or 5 episodes of TV before I can watch the movie, it's not necessarily impossible.
I thought Rebels was a big ass, but I think once you kind of get through the handful of episodes, like, because I think eventually everybody that was invested in this, like, you know what, I'm just going to do the YouTube video Rebels in 10. You know, I'm just going to do it. And you get like, yeah, there's going to be small perks and valleys that you're going to miss on stuff. There's also peaks and valleys you're going to miss as well. You don't have to go over the Kendrick Perkins of it all. But you look, I watch Rebels and I still forget some shit that happened. But I think, you know, for you, Devin, you're like, Ezra, Trap, Thrawn, cool. Kanan, dead.
Yeah, he sacrificed himself.
Hera, pilot. Ahsoka, Jedi. Sabine, kind of Jedi. Caught up. And then Zeb somewhere. I don't know where Zeb is. Poor Zeb.
Well, they said he was training new recruits. So, I mean, but to be, I mean, here you go.
He was a Mando.
Depending on how old someone like Poe Dameron is at this point in time, maybe Poe Dameron is his, like, you know, not his apprentice, of course, but like maybe Zeb was his flight instructor, like little shit like that.
Why'd you get me so excited?
Well, all we know is that Poe was born on Yavin 4.
Zari was there too, right? Kerry Russell's like Zari, his character name? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know. All I know is she has like a friggin' helmet with just like Daft Punk, and they used to be together or something. I don't know.
That was a clear toy. Yeah,
it was like completely doesn't make any sense. But
You know,
there's
the
a
good thing
connection.
is if they stick the landing for this, the Ray show and that they're gonna do, the Ray movie could be really, really good. Because that's like the next time they can bring these characters in with Ray and everything.
But it kind of goes back to like, if certain
It was
characters,
Zori! Boom!
yeah, if certain characters aren't there for certain fights, like, why do I care about like Ahsoka showing up to the Rey movie? If
Exactly.
you know what I
I'm
mean?
just saying. I'm
Like,
just saying. By
I
the way, just
get
looking
it,
at
but like,
sequel characters you could put in this, you could put Maz into this. Maz is a
I mean,
pretty
that's an
easy
underutilized character as well. Like
yeah.
that's shameful for someone like Lupita Nyong'o to be in Star Wars, and she got like 5 lines, and all of them were about Chewbacca wanting to have sex with Chewbacca.
I like that Wookiee.
Yeah, like what? And she was like 600 years old, and she's a pirate queen. Like,
Yeah.
why doesn't she have a fleet to fight
Yeah,
the
she better
Empire?
have some connection with Hondo then.
I I mean, if only they didn't put up a bunch of flags in her fortress and not explain any of them.
Yeah.
Like,
Anyways.
oh my goodness. Okay, so we're just bashing the sequels again as usual. We
Yeah.
need to watch. We need to talk about this episode.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Well, okay, so just kind of taking it to the beginning, like I said, the whole council meeting with Hera, I thought was I love the 3PO side of things. That one dude in the council, I do think he's part of the Shadow Council. I'm pretty certain he's part of the Shadow, because again, I think there is these kind of what we saw at the beginning of Ahsoka, what we saw in that weird scene with who was it in Mando? The bureaucrat that they talked to. But anyways, there was that one episode of Mando where we said some of the stuff, and then there was the one doctor as well. That whole episode was just a
Pershing.
doctor. Yeah, so there is like they are giving hints of Imperial stuff all over the place and laid in
Yep.
specific areas, and I do think that's another guy that's laid down there. And whether Mon Mothma is sneaking it out or not, I'm not 100% sure, but obviously she's going to side with whatever Leia does. And I think obviously Leia goes over all their heads.
Well, she talked about how she was like part of like the formal defense, like defense of what? Defense Council, defense of like Hera. Yeah, it's this is the tough part now. Is so this is where the intro of the show I think really stumbles, because we have this great thing where we go to Corellia, we find these ships stealing hyperdrive pieces, we go through the records and find all these things that they're making and stealing and from other star destroyers and stuff like that. And that wasn't enough evidence to talk about an Imperial plot. Like the
Right?
fact that there's multiple physical visual sightings of this giant hyperspace ring that tried to shoot Ahsoka down is, and this guy's like, they actually don't even matter. Like, they just tried to kill a Jedi. The Republic is going to do nothing about this. Like, that's where I get like the whole Hera being like I'm not going to say she's not a badass, but making her seem as like some kind of like off the cuff, like does whatever she wants, doesn't listen to anybody thing is like kind of total bullshit. Like,
Yeah, Hera to me is the one. I thought this was her best scene to date. Was one of the better scenes she's had. But she is kind of the square peg in the round hole part of this show. Like, it's kind of when you
right.
talk about Hera, it's like I think she's just kind of the base of like, hey, here's everything back in this side of the world. She's kind of your
Sure.
outlet to that. When I'm just kind of like, yeah, but to Thrawn and Ezra and Sabine and Ahsoka, because that's the stuff I care about right now.
I get that they're really trying to downplay Imperial involvement in the galaxy so that they can make the Republic complacent, so that when the First Order strikes from the unknown regions, first of all, a place that they are as actually very poorly explored.
Unknown.
Yeah, right. It's just like this great big like shock that's like, oh no, like the Imperials are back. And it's like, are you kidding? There's been like we've seen like 4 or 5 different pieces of evidence that it actually very much is back, but yet people are just saying like, no, it doesn't. Even like, so even Carson Teva acknowledged the events on Mandalore with Moff Gideon, which means they've been in contact with Din Djarin and Bo-Katan.
Mm-hmm.
And so they took their statements as witnesses, where Din Djarin says, yeah, I saw clones of Moff Gideon floating in a tube. And they're just like, even if they don't get the evidence from like the hollow sphere of like the Shadow Council, even the fact that Din Djarin or Bo-Katan was like, yeah, there's clones of fucking Moff Gideon out there, and they're just like, yeah, that's an isolated incident.
Yeah.
Like, what? No, that's not true. Like, Leia just said, that's like actually not a big deal. Like, we don't need to worry about this.
A whole planet got attacked by pirates, also,
Lame.
and that's an
Well,
isolated. Yeah.
no, but the other thing that like that's the tough part too is I think Navarro in Mandalorian has talked very strongly about it being independent from the New Republic.
Right.
And
That's true. That's true.
There's a lot of space pirate groups out there. There's a lot of great ones in canon. So I think to have space pirates attack a non-Republic world and the Republic just kind of like not doing anything about it, that's fair. That's fine.
Sure.
But the whole like, yeah, we saw this guy with a mustache floating around in a tube. That must mean something.
By the way, on Mandalore, that we thought was done.
Right. Yes, that has a fully functioning Imperial base on it.
You do think that would catch our attention? What is it? A Mandalore? Isn't that abandoned? Like a planet that is abandoned? An entire planet that just gone?
No. It's just a one-off. Like, there's only just one guy doing a thing. Like, don't even worry about it. Like,
yeah, that line stuck out to me. I'm like, let's pause a bit there, playa. Like, let's calm down for a second here. Like, what are we talking about?
And that's the kind of setup, like, and we've talked a lot about we've kind of shit talked a lot about the sequel trilogy, just to prove that we're equal opportunists. That is a problem with the Mando show and the Boba Fett shows is their perception of Imperials in that show.
Yeah. But so we get off of that planet. I love the dogfight. All the dogfights in this, I think, have been fantastic. The stuff with the mines and the coming in.
Yeah, because guess what? It's based off of World War II. Guess who liked World War II? George freaking Lucas.
There you go. And it just again shows how good of a tactician Thrawn is. I'm like,
yes,
why was this not done all the time when they know the enemy is coming in? This was absolutely brilliant by him. And man, Thrawn just cooked in this episode. Just watching him strategize. Like, there's two people I could literally just hear talk, and it's Thrawn and it's Baylan. And I can also just watch Baylan just stew. I'm like, when he's not saying anything, he's fucking just standing there.
When
so
he
much.
Oh my God. It was also kind of funny though, where he was like, take one last lesson from me. And then he kind of like puffed his chest out and started staring off in the distance. And I was like, oh, this guy's dying. And then when he didn't die, I just kind of laughed out loud. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. And him and Thrawn, like, they say so much without saying anything. And it's
do you want to hear a really cool thing about space mines using one of the books?
Of course.
So in Heir to the Empire, essentially what happens is he tricks all of Coruscant into thinking it's covered with mines that are cloaked.
Oh.
Because or is it mines that are cloaked or asteroids with like bombs on them? But basically he steals a cloaking thing. He steals a cloaking device, and he puts on one asteroid with like a bunch of mines on it, and then it crashes into one ship. And he was just like, so if anyone tries to leave Coruscant, you're all going to die.
Wow.
Even though it was kind of like, it was only like one example or two examples of it, because they didn't have the technology, right? So it's kind of one of those like tricks that it was like, oh, this is really clever. So the space mines kind of reminded me of that trick that he uses.
Obviously Filoni pulled that off. And another thing Filoni pulled off was, I think it's a comic with the Anakin stuff with him. Or is there a book with Anakin stuff? But there definitely is a comic with Anakin stuff.
And Thrawn?
Yes.
It's a book.
Okay. Because he knows, more or less figures out he's Vader, right?
He's known for a long time. He actually one of his first interactions in the galaxy was
in the Clone Wars.
He worked together with Anakin, who was trying to find Padme in a certain mission. and he doesn't deduce right away that he's Darth Vader, because obviously that would be looking into the future. But he ends up running into Vader again and figures it out right away.
And yeah, and Vader denies it over and over again. And I think that's when Palpatine realizes he would be a good ally.
Yeah, more or less. That's the newer Thrawn trilogy books.
Yeah. So I think that more or less kind of became canon just from the look that he had with learning
No,
who the
he
master
knows.
was.
He definitely knows. He knows
Yeah.
for sure.
So that kind of just became canon with everything. And I think I thought for a second when he found out who it was, and then he took the dog, the troopers off, said, get back off her, because I think it was a fact of he's intrigued with Anakin, and I think he wanted to integrate Ahsoka a little bit more. So I was surprised when, after they got the Night Sisters to figure out where they were targeted, that he did want to gun her down again.
Well, I think it was more so, it's just, quite frankly, he doesn't underestimate Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
especially
he sends
when
those
trained by
two.
Anakin.
Well, that's exactly it. Like that, and they wiped out like a good, 10 or 15 stormtroopers right away. It was like, okay, like we're gonna like let them do their thing, and then we're gonna, as he said, like their loading process of all those treasures is almost complete. And once they decide to leave, they're stuck. So they're either getting on the Chimera or they're not.
They're not. I don't think they are. By the way, too, another Hayden appearance as a hologram.
Oh my freaking! Just start the episode off by just like ripping my eyeballs out of their sockets. Like he's so beautiful in that armor, and I love the fact that Hayden's kind of doing like his best Matt Lantern impression as well, a little bit too. Like
mm-hmm.
It was like, it's like that was definitely emotionally manipulative, but I still loved it. Like,
I'm happy that Matt got to be in that episode of Mando, but I wish he would get to do more. I didn't bring this up the other day, but the one thing with Ahsoka, I was saying how wooden she was at first, right? And now we're kind of seeing where her emotions are. And I don't think it hit for a lot of people because of Clone Wars being animated until the Anakin episode. Right. She literally was a child in war. But I don't think a lot of us can process that as much because it's an animated show, right? So
sure,
when they show the flashback of her being the younger Ahsoka, then you're like, oh yeah, this was a child. But you don't ever really process it the same way because it's animated.
Oh yeah, she's like 12 years old and she's basically being forced to kill people. Like,
yeah, because you like hear like, oh, she's 12 or 14, but you're like, oh yeah, whatever. But when you had to visually see her as a child in war, I'm like, yeah, that'll mess you up, especially since you're your master, like your best friend at some time, more or less you could say too, the person you trust the most, more or less turns into Hitler.
That's definitely a take. I'm just kidding. It's
let's just say the most evil person in the universe.
Second most, but definitely.
Yes.
Vader goes through a lot. Vader has like actually very complex feelings. We just don't get to see a lot of them in the movies because he's only
there's a lot of times he still moans and lures for Padme still, and
basically it's guilt.
Thoughts.
Basically, he's angry at himself more than he's angry at anybody else, and he's angry that he lost Padme, and he's angry that he actually turned to the dark side, which is what fuels his hate to be even more dark and more powerful. So,
what's interesting too, Dev, is the power that Anakin was looking for and why he joined Sidious. Thrawn currently has that.
What, the dark magic?
The ability to bring people back from the dead.
Well, yeah, the Night Sister magic.
Yeah, because technically they could have brought Padme back. They could have given her a will to live.
If anybody knew about this, then at the time, I mean, maybe, but I feel like with dark magic, there's always like going to be like this kind of the monkey paw's going to curl, right? Like maybe
yeah, of course. But you tell me Palpatine would have cared. But I mean, Palpatine was never going to let him ever see Padme, because he knew Padme was never going to be influenced to the dark side.
Well, that's a really good point. Like whether or not she would have, even if she would have lived or was resurrected, there's no way that Sidious would ever let Vader ever come into contact with her.
And if he did, he would have convinced her that Obi-Wan slept with her and betrayed him, and he would make sure that he slayed her down or something.
Well, exactly right. He's so easily manipulated once he starts falling down that path to the dark side that it really didn't take a whole lot. It basically played on his trauma as a child and his trauma as a young adult watching his mother die, that like it was just such an easy thing to do for Palpatine. And plus we do know that Palpatine had Force persuasion, so it wasn't that difficult for him.
Yeah.
Just a long game. But to go back to the episode, the thing that really stands out to me, so you brought up Rosario Dawson's acting, and I think it's actually much improved. And I don't know if this is like on purpose, if it like, so obviously we know that she's acting differently because Ahsoka's a different person now.
Yeah, she's also not, then that's again, she's not a child anymore. She's an adult.
Well, but also, like, I mean, even from the first couple episodes of the show, where everyone thought that her acting was wooden. So, like,
yes,
was she more comfortable as an actor in the character the longer that she's going on?
Must have, and found herself a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's partly true, because like even watching those first couple episodes, it's like, whoa, like this is not really that impressive at all. Balin's just doing Balin things. I actually looked on Disney, the Disney profile, to see if there was a headshot of him to put as my avatar, but there isn't, so that's sad. So him kind of talking to Hattie though, like that was very much a man who understood his destiny, and I'm wondering why he felt that way. Or is this the kind of thing, do you think he can be persuaded to rejoin the light? Do you think he'll sacrifice himself to try to stop Thrawn?
Balin?
Yeah.
Yes, because
once he meets Ahsoka, like I don't think he hates Ahsoka.
He said you can't defeat. So I was going to ask you this. He said you cannot defeat me, and Ahsoka's like, I know. Was that Ahsoka knowing because she is stalling for time, or is because she knows where he is in the Force? First, I want to know what you took from that line.
Oh man, I think a little bit of both, and the reason why I think that is because she talks to Hu Yang about doing the same maneuver that they did previously.
Mm-hmm.
So she was stalling for time in order to draw attention away from Ezra and Sabine and blah 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 blah. So like we have to remember too that not only is she's a great tactician, because she's and Thrawn even mentions this, because she's unpredictable. So her being unpredictable would be rushing straight into a fight with someone who's as strong, if not stronger than her. And I mean that probably in a physical sense, maybe not necessarily with the Force. But doing so in order to get something out of it that she wants is a great tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Great strategy. So I don't think he's stronger than her in the Force.
Well, because he had this moment when he paused and he wasn't saying anything. And I'm like, what is going through this guy's mind right now? Like, is he understanding that Thrawn is going to turn on him? And even Shin has that moment when she looks at them, and
Thrawn wouldn't turn on him. Thrawn would uphold Thrawn would uphold any kind of agreement or whatever that they had. He tasked them with kind of overseeing the whole thing and taking care of Ezra and Sabine, which theoretically, I mean, with how many times Sabine's got her ass kicked, should be relatively easy, but they weren't predicting when or how Ahsoka was ever going to be there.
It's interesting you mentioned the Sabine thing. I find Sabine right now, when she uses her Mandalorian side of fighting style, she wins her fights.
Sure.
When she fights as a Jedi, she loses. And this is the second time I've noticed this now.
Yes.
So that has to be done on purpose.
Well, given the fact they spent so much time with her, like doing training montages and shit, that's entirely. I think you're exactly right with that. I actually find her the least interesting character in this show.
Yeah, because Ezra, he got that force on him, boy.
Well, he's got that
Damn.
charisma. Look at those eyeballs.
And he is
Holy
a
shit. He's
handsome
a
looking
oh my.
man.
Well, not only that, too, he did the coolest thing ever, which was the force block of the lightsaber, which we've seen Vader do now, was like,
When
ah,
he just said, like, I don't need any weapons. Like, oh, so you're like that then. Okay, Ezra.
that was some you know what that reminded me of? That is Star Killer Force Unleashed stuff right there.
That's what I was thinking too, especially with the force push that he had.
Oh, that was really cool. Now, one of the catch 22s of this episode was when they had Hattie pinned down and the stormtroopers were running away, and then he tried to like run at her for some reason, and she force pushed him. Like, that was super lame. Like, they
Yeah.
should have. I don't know what they should have done, but that was really like unconvincing for me.
Yeah. When he gets by the way, too, like I at one point too, because that is his lightsaber that Sabine has. That's
Sure.
Ezra's lightsaber. Um, I wonder if he will get his own lightsaber back, or Sabine will get her own, or if he just like, I don't need a lightsaber.
Why not Kanan's?
And maybe Kanan's, yeah. And
He,
I cannot remember where Kanan's is.
and that's okay. So that you bring up a good point. In her training dojo, where she put the chip which had Anakin's hologram on it, was a whole bunch of like training droids and weapons and stuff like that. Would that not be the kind of place where she's been collecting lightsabers?
Could be.
Like, in reality, right? That seems pretty realistic to me.
Yeah, could be. Um, the tortoises, the turtles, whatever you want to say, just the best.
Oh, the crabs, they're great. They're
Crabs.
they're hilarious. I like how friggin' Ezra sometimes speaks English to them and sometimes doesn't. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really get it, but like, fuck it, who cares?
I bet you Catherine Kennedy is mad that they don't have those ready for Christmas.
I don't
The little
know. Like,
the little houses. You could sell the little houses and everything
oh,
for like the
you know,
big time Star Wars collectors.
those friggin' like the fact that they have like little like they're like little caravans is like so
Yeah.
like Studio Ghibli to me
Mm-hmm.
in like the cutest way possible. Those seem like any kind of sprites or magical creatures in any kind of Ghibli movie.
That was like some Jim Henson stuff to me too.
If this was a movie, anytime that they're driving their vehicle would have been a Muppet.
Yeah.
But it's just easier to do CGI at this point for the show.
It
Also, the
definitely.
CGI of Ahsoka jumping out of the ship was really bad.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal.
But it was like one scene. I just was taken out of it when she did that, but whatever.
I think I'm at the point now where we have way more good than bad episodes in this now. We have like
Yes.
1.5 meh, one bad, and 4 great. That I'm pretty hard pressed and almost dare I say it's going to be impossible for it not to stick the landing now.
Assuming what you've told me is true, or what your prediction is that Skeleton Crew will tie into this, it's going to piss off a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the end of the world.
I had some people like, oh no, the Bad Batch will pick them off, and I'm like, here's the problem. I think everyone from the Bad Batch is dying,
Oh, easily.
except maybe
Absolutely.
Omega. Except maybe Omega.
What about Omega's sister, who was
And then
working
she's
at
just going to
this?
be, I'm down a whale and there's no hunter to save me.
That was actually a really good accent.
Thank
You
you.
know what though? Uh, the planet where they're on right now is a big part of the Heir to the Empire trilogy.
Is it?
Maybe she's there. Maybe she's there.
I remember that's the finale. The final season is for Bad Batch next year.
Right.
Yeah. So they'll be wrapping that up next year. Hunter.
Yeah. Wayland, the planet is a big part of this. So going forward, so if if Omega is going to be a part of the future plans of this show, that's where I think you would meet her.
Yeah, and the good thing about that is those final animated episode seasons, there's no meat on the bone. There is no let's go to this side planet and do a pod race. No, we don't have those episodes. I guess we do because we had the end, the sisters in Clone Wars. We had the two sister episodes.
But that may have been. I mean, why was that introduced? It's hard to say. Like, I think we're a little too close to those episodes now. I know they came out a couple of years ago, but are they going to serve a greater purpose in terms of
We've seen
developing
them
the
now in other
character?
stuff because we saw them in Bad Batch.
Yeah, I get that. Like they're trying to be more inclusive and they're trying to
Yeah.
bring out different people and whatever. That's awesome. It's more so like how does this really serve Ahsoka? And that's kind of the big question, you know? So I think we're a little too close to Ahsoka to see if like were they just really far along animating those episodes before they got like and they were just like
Yeah.
screw it, let's just do it anyways? Or was it like
Mhm.
are those characters going to serve a greater purpose at some point in time?
I mean, if you really wanted to take a base on it, I think they were a greater purpose of her realizing that she did have a bigger what's the word I'm
Like a
trying to look
role
for
in the
here?
universe.
Bigger role in the universe, and she needed to return to help out that side and that impact that she had helping them with the crime syndicate that they were going against
Right. The
made her
Pikes.
return and then be against the Pikes, made her return and fight along Rex and everything at the end there. And if she doesn't go there, she didn't help Rex get the chip out of his head. And if she doesn't help get Rex the chip out of his head, she doesn't have Fulcrum, and Rebels isn't
Blah,
what Rebels
yeah.
is.
Blah blah
So,
blah 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 blah.
mhm.
That's a pretty good point.
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
Anything else that we didn't hit on in this episode?
Probably. Do I remember any of it? No, not necessarily.
Yeah, because we had just to kind of go paint by numbers here. So we had the Anakin thing. We
Oh,
had
good dog fight.
we had the dog fight. We
Hera
had
stuff.
I'm going. Yeah, we had the Hera stuff. We had 3PO. I need more Chopper,
Balin.
by the way. Not enough Chopper. Give me more Chopper.
Well, it's hard because he swears every time he's on screen. So
I know.
he wanted to fight that dude so hard.
So bad. And I don't really do Funkos anymore. It's very, very rare when I do get a Funko. I am
Is he on
very
the
close to a
list?
Chopper is very close for Funko.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, the fight. Bye bye Space Whales. We hardly knew ye. Hayan, just he's the best. When he was in that, I care about him so much now. When he was in that, when the Imperials were after him or the Stormtroopers were after him, I was like, please don't get shot down because I actually really enjoy you now.
He's a really good pilot, and
Mm-hmm.
David Tennant's doing a great job with his voice. Like he's conveying. I know that he's a droid, but he's also conveying like I don't know if it's sentience. Well, like they're I mean, droids as far as are basically sentient, but like I get like strong suspicions that he has like very intense feelings and emotions.
If you had
And
to
it's
do
not
your
just his
top,
programming.
if you had to do your top 5 droid power rankings, what would you make them?
Um God, there's like it's weird because there's like weirdly there's a lot of droids, but not a lot of named droids. So like is number 5 Dio or BD?
I would say BD's up there. I would probably. I mean, you do R2-1 or C3PO-1.
I think the power rankings, if I worked for like a pop culture publication, would be it'd be R2.
R2, 3PO. Who's number 3?
K2
K2.
or BB8, right? That's the other thing is like people
BB8,
want, yeah.
K2, and then maybe Chopper even now.
That's and then it's like Dio, BD.
Yeah.
Those are kind of it, right? Like
Yeah. There's the one that I mean, what was the one
oh,
in
Layla.
Solo? Solo.
Oh, Fleabag.
Yeah, she was good. There's been a few good droids. I like the droid in Andor.
Oh, the construction droid who sacrificed himself.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good one too. I just don't remember his name, so that's kind of
Yeah.
important.
Hardly knew. Yeah, there's been a few good droids.
You know what? That's kind of one of the most consistent things Star Wars does is like it makes you care about droids.
Really does. Yeah, I was watching. I had the decision that you and I always question, right? So my nephew was ready to watch Star Wars. We didn't make it the whole way through because he got scared at a scene, and I'll tell you when he got scared. Um, but we had to decide. So what is the one? So my dad and I always wonder this, right? Like if I ever going to have kids,
Do you do machete order? Do you
what do you do?
do?
So ultimately, we decided New Hope.
Yes, I think that's the right answer.
We decided New Hope, and he was like, "I am not scared of Darth Vader," and I have like this big effing thing. I think they're like squashmallows or whatever. The Vader
Oh yeah, yeah.
that I got like kind of as a gay gift. So he kind of had been playing with that all day, and so he wasn't. I don't think he was ever going to be scared of Vader, right? The scene, and he was doing pretty good, and he was asking questions, and you know, my nephew is pretty intelligent for his age, and he dissects things in and asks a lot of questions and everything like that. It was the kind of the I want to say, I don't know if it's integration or not, but the conference room with the Imperials when Vader chokes the guy
Yep.
for the first time, that's when he got scared. Which I
Which
was
is
kind of happy
yeah, that
because we were very close to Peru and Owen skeletons, and I was going to
oh
cover his eyes. I was going to cover his eyes.
that's an interesting scene. That's even though you don't really see it happen to them, but you kind of want to be a little bit afraid of Darth Vader, right? Like as a like not a, you don't want to have nightmares, but like
He said he wasn't scared of Vader. He was scared of the Imperials. He said the way the Imperials were talking, he's like, they are really evil. He's like, he is scary, but they're really evil. I'm like, well, that's good that you recognize that.
I mean, British accents, man, they'll do it to you.
Yeah, I'm like, just don't go around your cousins, I guess. But yeah, because I was like, he was doing that. I'm like, oh shit, Baru and Owen is coming up. I'm like, I gotta get ready. And then like even I think too before that, the Jawas are slaughtered. So he's like, what happened to them? Where are they? And I'm like,
They got murked. They're
they're
sleeping.
gone.
Yeah,
They're
they're all
gone.
sleeping. What happened to
Then
their
yeah,
giant car? Oh,
and then it's like too,
there.
it's like, uh, we call them at this point, we call them sand people. The appropriate thing now is Tusken Raiders, right? But I keep on saying Tusken Raider, and he keeps on hearing sand people. I'm like, I give up. Sure, sand people.
It's whatever. It's okay.
And so yeah, it was a cool experience just to kind of see and process everything. And he called me the other day. He's like, I'm ready to go again. So we'll kind of take it bit by bit. But it was cool to kind of see that through the eyes the first time. And I guess the last bit of Star Wars news is Devin. It's an outrage. They're taking our jizz away from us.
You know what? Phrasing is really, really, really important. And
Let me keep my jizz.
you know what? Every man should be entitled to keeping their own jizz.
Yeah, jizz music, of course.
That's what I thought you were talking about from the very beginning.
Which I think, again, I don't think I've told this story in the pod. You know what I think I'm going to talk about. But when I went to Galaxy's Edge this year and I went to the cantina and I was dancing to the music and I said, that sweet, sweet jizz. And because I'm in the States, I turned my data on in there because there was some Wi-Fi in there that I could get. And I knew what I was doing. You know what I think I was like, there was like, of
3
my
people.
how many ever followers I have on my Instagram, there is like 3 people that get it. My sister who's here with me, my dad, Devin, and maybe there's like 2 other people, but those are the only 3 I know for sure that know what I'm talking about.
Randoms, yeah.
And when I got back to the house, the amount of people that DM'd me that some people I had not talked to for a year, and I just see, oh Josh, no, oh Josh, no, Josh, what are you doing? Thinking I meant to say jazz and had to explain to all of them to the point I'm like, after 50 DMs of this, I'm just gonna change it. Because I'm sick of explaining this.
I mean, if only we could include like Wikipedia links on our Instagram
I know,
pages, like that would be yours. It's just jizz music.
but and so it's now potentially becoming Jats music, I believe.
That's lame. I like
It's not
jizz.
as fun. That's
I
because
like
it's the
spit.
best. It's the best thing you can tell to a non-Star Wars fan. Because I told it to everybody. Cantina. I'm like, how about the jizz? They're like, excuse me, because when you go to the cantina too, unless you have like a super big group, right? You kind of have to share tables with people. So we
Right.
happen to share the table with two different people, and people are kind of communicative and stuff like that. And I had a few drinks in me at that point as well. So you
Some
want to
blue
be a little
milks.
more some blue milks and some Ragnar blood. And you want to talk a little bit more and stuff like that. And I mentioned a few times like what? So you definitely I definitely will miss out on that.
Oh, Josh, making friends at Disney World.
It's been a good Star Wars year for me, I gotta say.
Good. I'm really
Was
happy
and
for
was
you.
Andor? No, Andor was last year.
Obi-Wan was this year.
Obi-Wan was last year.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was. Bad
Obi-Wan,
Batch
was it
Bad
Obi-Wan
Batch
then
was this year.
Andor?
Yeah, Bad Batch was this year.
Oh.
Mando was this year, so Mando not so great, but Bad Batch was this year, which was good.
Yeah.
Mando, me getting to go to Galaxy's Edge, I'm counting, and
Okay.
then
I'm happy for you.
yeah, this is Ahsoka right now. So
It's not back yet because it's not prestige, but it's in a better place than it has been.
and Survivor, which I thought was pretty good.
Was Tales of the Jedi this year?
Tales Jedi Survivor, yeah.
No, Tales of the Jedi.
No, that was last year as well. That was last October. Oh, and Visions was this year.
Yeah, Visions was good.
Visions was good. The French one I still think is my favorite one.
There you go.
That one
You are cultured after all.
I am. So we will be back next week with so it's going to be a little bit of interestingness. That's not a word. But we will have the finale of Ahsoka next week with Devin and I. And then the week after, we will return to doing the rundown again. But Devin and his solo episodes of just really focusing on the show end. And then Andy will come in for just solo after episodes of Loki. Devin and I will still talk about Loki, but we won't talk about Loki till the next week.
Gotcha. Thank you for letting me know.
We're going to
right
bring
now.
we go from the Star Wars lore master to the Marvel lore master.
That's perfectly okay. I can only be one lore master.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I will add, Loki now has the heavy lifting to do because I feel like Star Wars is in one of the better places. Like I said, I think it's been in a while, and I think you could somewhat agree with me on that right now.
I do.
Marvel has some work to do to catch up on that because multiverses are, and I'll have a multiverse rant for you when we get off this pod quick. But multiverses, I'm over them, and Marvel is just in the middle of figuring out all of theirs, and they're about to do a whole show about it.
There you go.
So we will catch you up next week with the finale of Ahsoka. Thank you for watching Nostarga Lane. Until next time, folks, cheers and enjoy the day, people.
Thank you for listening to the Fresh Take Network. Follow us on social media platforms at Fresh Take 42.